In this video, I'm gonna share my photo book collection as of 2022. Hey, my name is Matt and I'm a street photographer, so obviously we're gonna talk about photo books. Let's get into it. The first one I wanna talk about is this book, which is How I Make Photographs by Joel Meyerowitz. This book is really good. Joel Meyerowitz in the photography community is like the Dumbledore or the Gandalf of it. He is so poetic at explaining photography and he's very poetic and eloquent when he speaks. He's got a lot of YouTube videos where you can hear him talk. Just listen to one and you'll know what I mean. In this book, it's actually kind of like a masterclass book of what he thinks about in terms of how he actually makes photographs and discovering your identity as an artist, storytelling, composition, how to anticipate moments on the street, how to walk like you own the street, how to edit your photographs, and how to sequence your photographs for a book possibly, and black and white versus color, and just a lot of topics he touches upon here. And it's been really insightful to read, and I'm probably gonna read it again. I love it. It's really very much less a photo book and more of like a on the subject of / process book. This next photo book, it's called The Photographer's Playbook. Basically, it's got a bunch of photographers and their thoughts or exercises on when you're feeling like in a creative rut or you're just blocked, that you can do one of these exercises and try something different. One of them was like rolling dice, and depending on what you roll 3 times, that determines the number of blocks you walk north or west, east, south, and then again, so you end up in a random area and just focus on taking photos there for a set amount of time. This other book is also not a photo book per se, but this is a reference book mostly. It's called Photographer's A to Z by Taishan. This one's really cool because I've been getting into the history of photography lately. I feel like it's important for me to understand where we have been, where people have been, where they went, and up to now and where we're going. And it's kind of cool piecing this together like a puzzle and seeing what different photographers from different times were focusing on, what they shot with, and how subject matter, composition, and storytelling and the culture kind of has evolved over time. But this book really is a reference for when I find new photographers. I can reference them in this book and see what time period they lived in, it gives you quick hitters, like 1-page summaries of what they're known for, their background. It's basically a 1-page Wikipedia, and their accomplishments and their style that they're known for, or what they did to kind of push the boundaries, and a few key photographs from them, so you get a sense of what their work actually looked like. The next book I'll go through, it's more of like another process book. This one is called On Street Photography and the Poetic Image by Alex Webb and Rebecca Norris Webb. Alex Webb, I haven't gone into too much research yet, but I've seen some of his work and it's amazing the way he works with colors and finds those moments where crazy things happen to be in one place and he gets this photo. It's really cool listening to him explain his thought process on how he comes to those photos or what he was looking for. And he also references older photographers that were his inspiration, like Joseph Kudelka. And his wife also talks about photography. The way she talks about it was incredibly poetic. And Alex Webb just was very direct about stuff, I felt like. This one is called Forever Saul Leiter. Saul Leiter was a photographer whose work wasn't really known and showcased until kind of recently. But he was part of that quote unquote New York School of Photography alongside like William Klein and Ernst Haas and other people in New York taking photos. But what I love about this book is that it really goes through all his photographs basically and how beautiful they are. His work is so much more abstract, and this book is really well priced and really well published. The colors are great, and it also includes little tidbits here and there of his contact sheets so you can see how he moved through a moment to get this abstract result, and some of his quotes. It's really interesting. I really do love like the process behind photographers and how they work, and when they have quotes or hearing them talk like Joel Meyerowitz or Alex and Rebecca Webb, and Saul Leiter, it really gives you a sense of their personality and what they value. So I find that really interesting. Hong Kong Yesterday by Fan Ho. His street stuff is just super beautiful. The way he uses light and shadow. He was known as the master of light and shadow. Compositions are great and his storytelling is great. It makes me want to go to Hong Kong, honestly, and see if it's still like that. He captures this real crazy atmosphere and he experiments a lot with cropping in this, which I find really interesting, and it's just a beautiful book. When I read his book, because his composition was so great, I actually read this shit like sideways sometimes or upside down. Still, the photographs still look amazing. Bruce Gilden's Cherry Blossom, I think this is a little bit more recent. It's about his time in Japan. I don't know if it's the context, but just him shooting in Japan and these subjects started linking him to me with like Daido Moriyama, but less abstract and very real and in your face, but yet still capturing these gritty, off the cuff moments that aren't necessarily quote unquote like beautiful, but have so much personality. And to pull that off in a different country and do that is very bold. It takes a lot to do that. And the stories he has in here of like when he was hanging out with Yakuza and getting the pictures of like the subordinate lighting the cigarette of his boss, it's just really interesting stuff. So these are all the books I read, and now let's go to the massive section of all the books I haven't read. I just finished this actually. This is Life is Good and Good for You in New York by William Klein. The original book is actually really hard to get. So this book by Errata Editions Books on Books is a reprint of the book. So what you're kind of seeing right now is a video of the book. I like it just for the fact that it's a reference to look at his photos, but honestly, some of these photos, the contrast is insanely heavy, like darker, the shadows just don't have detail and it's darker than what it might have actually looked like in the original book. So this book was originally made in 1955, 1956, and then a reprint happened in 1995. And I think I want that 1995 one, but it costs like $200+, which I don't want to spend. Hopefully they republish his work, and he just passed away. So hope that the publishers can do that so more people can enjoy his work. Moving on to Robert Frank, The Americans. This is like a historical seminal book in the chronology of photography. And the reason why I have these two books is because these two actually are contemporaries with each other, 1950s and 1950s, but with two different POVs, perspectives on life. I'm going through The Americans now to compare with William Klein. The general gist is that it shows a side of America that isn't glamorous and kind of reveals that, which was groundbreaking at the time. Kind of similar to William Klein in that he showed really ordinary moments and kind of crazy moments that no one would publish. This book that I got recently for Alicia and I really want to read, and another photographer I want to explore is Elliot Erwitt. From what I understand, he's super funny, super witty, and it shows in his photographs, and he made a book about dogs. This is the small print. I got it at this museum in New York called Fotografiska, which if you're in town is a dope photography focused museum, and they've got a great gift shop / bookstore. This one is called Seeing Things. I actually did read this. It's a kid's guide to looking at photographs by Joel Meyerowitz. The reason why I bought this is because I'm really dumb. I'm still learning a lot about photography, honestly. So I need it explained like I'm 5. I don't think this book is made for 5-year-olds because the way he explains how to look at some photos and some techniques is definitely beyond the comprehension of a 5-year-old. He talks about like frame within the frame, chaos, blue hour, everything all at once. I mean, he's got references to Saul Leiter, to Alex Webb, who I just talked about. So it's really awesome seeing, again, Joel Meyerowitz, this great thought leader in the space, offer his perspective on other photographers. So it's really cool. Shadow, eye contact, the right moment, abstraction, light, happiness. This is actually an awesome book and I totally recommend it. I look through this pretty often. This one is called Refractions 2 by Ralph Gibson. As you can see, this shit is not even open because I have a lot of books to go through, and so I haven't even opened it. I found this book from a YouTube video by Ted, who runs The Art of Photography, and he highly recommended it, and I checked out some of the thumbnails and I was like, oh, I dig this. And I saw a limited run, scarcity mindset, and just bought it. Same with this book. This was another impulse buy. Right when I got to New York, I bought a lot of books. And at that time, Saul Leiter, which I just talked about with Forever Saul Leiter, this is called All About Saul Leiter, but I don't know what it really is about because I haven't opened it, but I would expect that it's all about Saul Leiter. This book, I'm like, a quarter of the way through. Modern Instances, The Craft of Photography, a memoir by Stephen Shore. Stephen Shore is another person who I'm slowly getting into, and he is a person who I think teaches and really likes to write about the subject of photography. This is definitely not a photo book. This is like another one of those thought slash writing books. Some of his stories are really easy to read and direct, and some of them start to get like really long and abstract, and I don't know what the hell he's talking about, hence why I have a kid's book. This book so far has been pretty good for the most part and offers some like interesting takes and critiques on the craft of photography. Oh, this isn't even a photo book, but I bought it, but I'm gonna talk about it because it's hella dope, and this is one of my favorite creative idols and inspirations. Virgil Abloh, Figures of Speech, multidisciplinary creative who ran Off-White, recently passed away at the end of last year. This is basically his monograph, and it has a lot of content about his process and kind of like the sketches and the works in progress and iterations leading up to the finished result. I really love books where you can get into behind the scenes of how a creative or an artist ended up at something and how they found their way. Whew, this is a big chunky boy. It's gonna take me a while to get through. We're going through all the big chunky boys right now. Speaking of process, I'll talk about this next one. This book is Magnum Contact Sheets. Contact sheets, if you don't know, are basically the thumbnails or all the shots of a roll of film that the photographer sees and then the editor, whoever ends up selecting. So what's awesome about seeing contact sheets and why it's behind the scenes is that we often see a final result of a photo, but what about the before and after? It's not like a photographer just waits for that perfect moment, that singular moment in time, and then just like, yes, I got it. No, it's like, oh, I kind of see something developing. Oh, take a picture, take a picture, take a picture. All right, right here, take a picture, take a picture, take a picture. Scene progresses, things happen. All right, I'm done with my role or whatever, and I move on. Essentially, how they moved through a moment and then how they ended up selecting one. As much as like the decisive moment is this like grand concept, it's cool to pull the rug under or you take off the blanket and it's not actually that case. And it references a lot of famous photographers, so it covers like a pretty good breadth. I've gotten through like 5% of this book, but it's so dope. Another chunky boy though, so heavy. All right, the last chunky boy is another Joel Meyerowitz book. I figured we started with him and now let's end with him. This is Joel Meyerowitz, Where I Find Myself. I wanted his monograph. It's like 3 different volumes or something of all his work, but it's so expensive. So the next best thing off Amazon is Where I Find Myself. I think it goes through backwards in time. Yeah, it goes through his recent work, and as you go through the book, it goes through to back in time to when he started. So it's an interesting concept to see a photographer reflect on his whole life's work. He also, again, includes his thoughts on each time period and where he was at during his phase of life when he shot certain photos. I've only gotten through like 5% because again, it's a real chunky boy, but a lot of books I still need to get through, and some that, I just don't read in one sitting. I like sometimes revisit, or I just slowly get through like these guys. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on any books you have or would recommend. And if you're interested in seeing more of my just like stuff, then check out my office tour.